Hello, everybody, and welcome to Azure Flash News.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. It is happened to be a Friday, and today actually is the 24th of January. So we're glad you're here. We're back with another episode, and as you can see, if you're watching the video,
Or
Rick
if you can hear,
Eric, you can hear. If you can tell, this is not Rick.
I'm Tim Sullivan,
Yeah,
Cloud Solution Architect in the Edina area.
That's right. So we have Tim with us today. We're really glad to have him today. And we have some really interesting updates this week. Some news about the news.
Oh yeah.
So that's very meta, but it is about the news. So the first thing is we're going to talk a little bit about the Azure updates themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to talk a little bit about Azure Functions, a little bit about Databricks and a certification there, and then some Azure Active Directory stuff. We love identity because it's kind of
Everything.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of important. And then some Azure Data Factory stuff.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to mention, and for those of you who are watching, you can actually see this. And this is not in the show notes right now. We can stick it in the show notes after we're done.
Yep.
But the Azure updates, there's two places to go and get updates for Azure. Because one would be way too simple.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep you on your toes. We have two places because they're for different reasons. So the Azure blog is one place where people go and get some updates. But there's another place, the Azure update site, I guess. Is it a blog?
We'll call it a feed.
A feed? Yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's good. I like that. And basically, this has more of the technical updates.
Yes. Yeah, and dives a little bit more into the new features that are coming out and the things that, as a technical person, you might care about more than the case studies are great for when you want to see how someone applied the technology. But when you're following a technology that you really care about, so for instance, we're not going to talk about it today, but Network Security Group Flow Logs got some new features for supporting service endpoints on a storage account. You might have really been waiting for that to come out. This is where you would come to find it.
Right. And another thing I always tell people is this is a really good way to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've actually done this at a couple of recent meetings with customers recently. But we talk a little bit about sort of the Donald Rumsfeld known knowns, known unknowns.
Unknown.
Yeah. And so this can help you move things out of the unknown unknowns into the known unknowns.
Yeah.
If you're with me. Because if you're looking, you're like, oh, Network Security Group Flow Logs. You're like, flow logs, what is that?
Yeah.
Right. So this might be a way for you to kind of keep up with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I just kind of wanted to mention that because I've noticed, and we've noticed that these kinds of updates have kind of stopped coming out on the Azure blog.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be coming more out over here. So anyway, regardless, if you're tuned in here,
Yes.
we're going to find them for you. We're going to get them to you. But if you're interested in a feed like this, go look on the Azure updates. And I have the link is here, and I'll put it in the show notes. It's just at azure.microsoft.com/updates.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a part of the Azure blog. But anyway, that's that. The first thing is Azure Functions.
Yeah. So the new runtime 3.0 is generally available. As an infrastructure guy, my background's in infrastructure. I peripherally will use functions for some things. So I'm still waiting with bated breath for that PowerShell GA, like fully supported for everything.
PowerShell. He wants to use PowerShell.
Yeah. Which we do have Azure automation for that for those of us in the infrastructure space. But so I'm guessing that we've got a lot of customers that have been waiting for this. You know, a new full version release is obviously an important announcement that's being made. You know, they specifically call out that we're now supporting .NET Core 3.1 and Node 12. So if you're in either of those spaces, something to take a look at. It is backwards compatible, but I believe that there is a migration plan that you'll need to take into account when you're doing your functions.
That's good to know. There's a link in this article about the migration that Tim is talking about. Mm-hmm. So if this catches your interest and you want to follow through, go to the show notes for the show, find this link, and then inside of this feed item or article or whatever, there's a link that says Azure Functions documentation, and it sends you to that area. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important to understand that you know, we continue to make updates to this infrastructure, mm-hmm. and it's a never-ending task for us to keep this evergreen. And that's part of what you, as a customer, want from the cloud.
Yes.
So, you know, you could look at this and be like, oh, I have to go and like, oh, another version of Windows came out. I have to upgrade my whole fleet again. Well, okay, there's some level of migration here, but we certainly have to keep on top of what's going on and have some version capability so that you have the ability to kind of go when you're ready. But it's really important for us to keep the innovation coming in this kind of stuff.
Well, and I think that that is worth calling out, Mark. That they'd mentioned we're not deprecating version 1 or version 2 yet, so
Yep.
you will still be able to continue to use those for the foreseeable future. We're going to continue to provide updates and security patches for those. And if we do plan to deprecate that, they'll give at least 12 months.
Yes. So a year's notice for any sort of change there. And I have a feeling that between 2 and 3, it's going to be small changes. The difference between 1 to 2 was a little bigger because 1 was built on .NET Framework and 2 was built on .NET Core. So the differences, there were maybe a little bit more differences, but I found that anything that I deployed, just deployed. It wasn't that big of a deal. I wasn't doing anything too fancy. This is just my sort of CSA messing around. But I found that the stuff that I had didn't really change. But what it did do is it brought a lot of cross-platform support. So when we went to .NET Core, all of a sudden we have real support for Java, real support for sort of the Linux-targeted languages. So, and I think Python was even not GA in 1 and did go GA in 2 in version 2. So anyway, it's been really great to kind of continue to provide these new updates. So
yeah,
that's great. Okay. You know what? Whenever I see this one about high trust, I think of Rick because he loves these kinds of updates. He loves all of the certification type updates. But well, for people who don't know, Databricks is like Databricks is a commercial open source. People hate it when they say commercial, but it's kind of the commercialized version of Spark. It's like the people who wrote Spark started a company called Databricks, and it's kind of a packaging, a commercialization of the Spark engine.
Well, and really, Azure Databricks in and of itself are taking in conjunction with the Databricks company and rolling out a service that we support as a first-party service.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that as well.
Yeah, right. That's right. So this is the Azure Databricks capability. And what's really great about Azure Databricks is you can just go into your Azure subscription and say, I want some Databricks. Spins it all up. It has auto scale up and down clusters so that it turns off all by itself after 15 minutes or whatever.
Yep.
Really, really great capabilities for Azure Databricks. But it is now high trust certified.
Yeah. And, so high trust, one of those healthcare certifications building on HIPAA and high tech, things along those lines. I think that this article, it really covers at a high level that we're continuing to invest in our compliance posture.
Yeah.
And so, this is a healthcare specific compliance certification, but if you have a different certification that you're worried about in your industry, we do have our trust center that publishes all of the different compliances that we have, and we call out here, that we do have PCI DSS, ISO 27001, things along those lines. So if you have a compliance certification, chances are we either have that certification and the attestations to go along with that, or we're working on that right now. So, I haven't looked in a while to see what the actual count was. Last one I remember was 91, but
it's a bunch.
It's getting close to 100 different compliance certifications that we have in the cloud. And obviously, each service that we have will have different components that go into that service, and they'll be affected in a different way. But if you're in the healthcare space and you're in that machine learning space, you can now take advantage of Databricks with some of that high trust, that data that needs to be compliant with high trust.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head where it's like, in some ways, it's like compliance bingo. So like we have the big chart of all the things, and we are just working at it. We take this very seriously, and we are getting all of these things done because we know that real customers, real workloads require these kinds of compliances, and so we really work hard at getting it done.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, next. Yeah, this one is actually kind of small, but it's also kind of big.
It's a really small announcement, but
yeah, it's like one short little paragraph.
Yeah, but the reason why I think that this is important, so just to clear it up for
we
the
said
people
this.
listening,
We just said this.
Azure Active Directory support in Azure Database for MySQL.
Okay.
And the reason why I think that this is important is for a couple of different reasons. Is that you know, as a Microsoft employee, you know, a few years ago, people would say, well, Microsoft doesn't really work with open source, but we have embraced open source over the last,
Big time.
what, 6 years or so?
Yeah.
And so we've had Azure Database for MySQL for a while. So if you were taking your, you know, your LAMP stack and migrating it to Azure, you can migrate that with PaaS services.
You
So
can stay on MySQL, no problem.
yeah, you can say on MySQL, no problem. Now what we're doing is we're taking that same PaaS service and we're adding in our identity SaaS service and providing you with a very secure, manageable enterprise build-in to your database environment. And so this has been available for the Azure Database for SQL offering for a long time. But what this means is that if you're in that open source space and you really want to take advantage of the identities that you have built out in Azure AD, this is in preview still, so it's not GA, but you will be able to do that now.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's really important to think about, like one of the big buzzwords right now, or buzz phrases, is zero trust. And so, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's a great strategy for securing your environment.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about what zero trust is for our
So
listeners who might not
we
know?
should, because this fits into zero trust,
Yeah,
I think, a
yeah.
little bit. And so zero trust, I'll interpret it, and you see what you think.
Sounds good.
So to me, zero trust is like connecting with known identities from known endpoints to known resources. And so, like, you know, known endpoints means like secured endpoints, like your Windows desktop. So we don't deal with that too much, but it's a very important part of the strategy. In other words, do you manage your endpoints? Like, do you have, you know, Windows ATP type, you know, threat detection on your endpoints and virus detection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And do you make people log in? But the one that we really care about is using known identities. And what's so cool about this is whenever you log into Azure Database or an application that uses Azure AD or whatever, you're using an identity platform that is external to you. And so, like, for instance, I was working with a group and we were trying to figure out who had been logging on to the website, and we didn't have to worry about that because Azure AD knows.
Yeah. That's a great point, Mark. And yeah, what it comes down to is there's a couple of other phrases that go along with zero trust, and you know, you might hear identity is the new firewall, or assume breach. And really, what it is, especially in this in the new world of cloud operating, I can no longer expect that all of my employees are sitting in one location bound by one, you know, /16 block of private IPs that egresses through these two public IPs, and I can just firewall off all my services to those, because our employees are mobile. We don't want them to have to connect to a VPN for everything. But we also don't want to just leave these services open. The other reason why this is really nice too, in addition to the zero trust and no longer having to worry about the network boundary as your real perimeter, identity becomes your perimeter, is that you only have that one identity then. You don't have, you know, M. Garner, the Azure Active Directory user, and M. Garner, the user on this database, where you have to remember, or perhaps you're using the same password, or even worse, you're writing down the password and sticking it on a Post-it note underneath your keyboard. No, you don't have to worry about any of that anymore, because it will be that one common identity that you have.
Yeah. So I just think it's really interesting and exciting to see how, like, there's no reason for us to not embrace and support MySQL and to have that same kind of support. So it's kind of a small thing. It's a very small announcement because it only takes a second to kind of explain what it is and what we're introducing here in preview. But it's kind of a big deal to think about being able to use Azure Active Directory to log onto these cloud resources. That's kind of what we expect.
Yeah.
So very cool. It's very, very cool. So, all right. Anyway, and then we have one more here. Also an incredibly short.
Incredibly short, but I think it also has a little bit of meat to it.
Okay, talk to me.
And I'll explain why. So this announcement is Azure Data Factory now supports copying data into SFTP, and this is generally available, so it's not a preview feature. This is released, and it supports SFTP as a sink and as a source. And these are Data Factory concepts, you know, that data space concepts. But what that means is, as the place that I'm moving data to, or the place that the data is originating, I can now connect to it with SFTP. And the reason why I think that this one is important is that we still recognize that even though SFTP is what a lot of people would call legacy technology. It's still being used in enterprises all over the place.
Yeah.
And what this enables you to do is to use a cloud service and still perform those SFTP functions that a vendor might require, or that some of your own internal applications might require, that it's not worth investing, you know, the rework into those applications to make them, you know, more cloud native or something along those.
Yeah, and one of the a very common scenario is you have a place where people are bringing you files, or people or companies or whatever, and so to get off of SFTP, you'd have to go and contact all of these different vendors or suppliers or whatever they are, you know, data suppliers, if you will, and help them migrate onto another technology. And it's just like, I mean, that's just a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so this way you can kind of keep that technology, but then immediately go to a cloud service like Azure Data Factory, which, you know, at its core really helps you orchestrate all of the data flow in your data pipeline. It can really help you orchestrate all of those things. It doesn't, in some ways, I mean, I guess now it's kind of starting to have some ETL-like capabilities in it, but at a high level, for sure, it can say, I want to move some data from here. I want to call this Databricks job, and then I want to run this stored procedure on this database, and then I want to copy some data to Blob, and then whatever. And so it really kind of helps you orchestrate the end-to-end flow. And now being able to either pull from or put data on SFTP is a really great addition to the toolbox.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great.
Because the value of a data movement tool is only as great as its ability to connect.
Yeah, yeah, and there is a link in this article to the full list of connectors, supported connectors. Yeah, so
I'll actually go there. If you're watching the video here, I'll just kind of click on it.
And so I don't know, it looks like maybe it's about 50, 60 different connectors. So obviously, you know, we do have support for a lot of different Azure connectors, but then, you know, we even have, you'll see Amazon Redshift, DB2 if you're an IBM shop, Google BigQuery, you know, in that database space, or, you know, we've supported FTP for a while, it looks like in Data Factory. And so for those of you who are using FTP, now you can take advantage of SFTP, which is the secure file transfer protocol.
Yeah,
so
because we don't want it to just be.
we don't just want it to be plain text. Yeah.
It's just like HTTPS.
Yeah.
It makes everybody feel better.
Yeah.
Well, it is better. So.
And so we can, you can see that we have all sorts of different connectors across all different cloud platforms. So Salesforce, SAP Cloud, QuickBooks is in preview. You know,
how about that?
Yeah, so we have support for all these tools, and now SFTP is just another one for you to be able to take advantage of in your data movement pipeline.
Yeah, it's really cool. So if you are in the data movement business, if you're in the data engineering organization in your company, this is going to be really important for you to kind of understand what you can and can't connect to, and hopefully can connect. I mean, hopefully it's on the list. And if it's not, I have a feeling that, you know, the connectivity team on Data Factory would really want to know, like, what do they need to work on next?
And we do have a great way of doing that. And a lot of these updates will call out, you know, because of feedback that we heard. The way that our engineering teams get feedback, if you're not aware, is user voice. And so if you have a connector that you need, go out onto user voice and put it out there, and other customers of Microsoft can go and vote those up. And that's how the engineering teams will prioritize what it is that they're going to work on the next sprint.
And it only works if everybody votes.
Yeah.
Right? That's how we actually get the right prioritization. Otherwise, we're biased towards the people that are willing to go out to user voice, which I guess is good if you're willing to, you know, it's kind of like democracy. You kind of got to work hard to earn it. You know, you got to make some effort to participate. And in this case, it kind of goes the same way. We want to hear from you. You will have to go through some effort, but you know, if you'll go through the effort, then you can know that we are actually looking at that. I know that the product groups really do look at this kind of
stuff. Yeah.
So that's just about it for this week. Tim, if people want to contact you in between now and in between the shows or whenever, how would they do that?
So you can hit me over email at sullivan.timothy@microsoft.com, or I'm on LinkedIn, TJ Sullivan1.
Okay, great. And if you want to contact me, you can catch me, mgarner@microsoft.com. It's totally fine. Please send me an email. That's all. It's all good. Or you can also catch me at mgarner on Twitter. That works too. And if you want to keep up with what's going on with Azure Flash News, catch us at Azure Flash News on Twitter. You can also catch the show on YouTube, Stitcher, Google, and iTunes. And we really appreciate those 5-star iTunes reviews because it really helps kind of promote the show internally. And I mean, on the iTunes website. So we really appreciate that when you guys are able to do that. And I guess that's it for the week.
Yeah, short week.
Yeah, it was a short week, but it's good stuff. And in between now and when we have the next show, just remember, as Rick says, keep your fingers on the keyboard and keep your head in the clouds. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.